super excited to have this panel here today. So let's move to what most of the folks probably really want to hear, which is how do they get your money, right? Now, we've heard a little bit about each of you, but people want checks. So let's, in any order, right, this will just be sort of quick fire, is what's the best way to get your attention for a first conversation?
Intro through one of the people I've invested in.
I think, I'm still pretty early, and I think like I still will take like cold emails all the time because I think like you never know what you could find. But I'm also, maybe like I probably have more time than Christine does.
Well, it's also top of the stack, right?
Right,
because,
exactly.
So for instance, since my email is ridiculous, every CEO or
her
founder...
email is ridiculous. We're roommates, and I can't believe her email.
Yeah, so every CEO
out.
or founder that I've backed, including ones I've backed 10 years ago, they go right to the top. They have a big exclamation point for priority, and so I will read those first. And so, do you want to be number 800 or number 2? So, yeah.
But I also think genuinely, I think like cold emails. I mean, I definitely take cold emails, but also I think through somebody within the network, whether it's like someone who knows you or finding. I think the hustle of finding someone to introduce you is actually like always convincing that this person really tried to make that conversation happen. So I always appreciate those.
They didn't just swipe right and go, oh, I'll
exactly.
take that one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I would say an intro from someone that vets these startups pretty well, that I think has good insight into the company. But I also am open to cold emails if it's well thought out. If it looks like they could have emailed it to 1,000 VCs, then I probably won't pay attention. But if it looks like they thought about how I could add value to their company, I'll definitely read it and respond.
Yeah, it's like applying for a job. You don't just stamp it out. You go, oh, I see you're entering this market, and right?
I also think it's about being thoughtful about how to start a relationship with a potential investor. And so, for example, like all of us here speak on panels and at conferences all the time. And if this is going to be an entry point, coming up to us afterwards and kind of sharing about the company, and then we see you again and again at other things, that's an amazing way to start a relationship without being like too much like please invest right now.
What's something that you would say you've seen as a common pitfall? What's like here, do not do this in the fundraising process?
I've had entrepreneurs come up to me at just on the last point, at conferences where they know I'm speaking. For example, like I love Comic-Con. So I've been to Comic-Con for about 5 times. I've done the whole cosplay thing too with friends. And last year I had an opportunity to go to Comic-Con to speak on a pop culture Shark Tank panel. And I was like, sure, I want to go to Comic-Con. And an entrepreneur came up to me afterwards, and it was actually very humbling. He said, I bought a ticket from Chicago to come to this conference, to come to this panel to meet you because I want you to invest in my company. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure. But like, let's talk. Let's talk. Like, what is your company? Like, how far are you along? And who are the other people? And so obviously, it honestly wasn't there yet, but it started the relationship. And so I would say, be thoughtful and be careful about like the relationship that you build and the time that you spend. Don't buy $1,000 ticket to go to a conference to meet one person. Probably.
Yeah, that's a red flag, really. It actually worked against him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I guess I would say I think you should be really focused on what investors you want to talk to. So do some research into the firms, into the people that you think could add value to your company. The last thing you want to do is shop the game book to as many investors as possible, because you could get a lot of investors interested, and you only can get maybe 1 or 2 new investors in the round, and then you're going to have to be excited enough about the space to invest in a competitor, and now they know all the proprietary information about your company. And so I do think that that's one thing. VCs are generalists, so we are knowledgeable about a lot of spaces, but shouldn't be as knowledgeable as space as an entrepreneur who's only focused on it. It's amazing to me how often I will ask some softball questions like, what do you think about this company who is clearly a competitor and they don't know who the company is? So I shouldn't be more of an expert on their space than they are. Now, I'll become more knowledgeable if they get me excited about their space, but they need to do their diligence on what they're going after.
Yeah, no, I actually completely agree with that. I think like not being able to and also, you know, when you have an opportunity to come and present, or you have an opportunity to come meet the investor, or, you know, as somebody at Google, it's just be prepared. I think like that's something which sounds so silly, but we've had teams come in where nobody has, you know, I get it, there are always technical difficulties and something doesn't work, but then, you know, be ready that you could still keep going. You know your company inside out. I don't know your company. Yeah. Nobody else knows your company. You should be comfortable to just be able to speak as freely about your company. Mm-hmm. You don't need a slide deck. And I get it, everyone has a crutch and whatever it may be, but also being prepared on your market. I think like not knowing your own market, it's not that like within Google there are, you know, certain product areas where people are incredibly excellent at what they're doing, but they're not, and they are going to challenge you, but you should take the time to know your market better, hopefully, than the product manager at Google did and came and grilled you. So yeah, being prepared, I think, is always a red flag.
Yeah. And there's this mess theme, which is like just generally doing homework. Because in theory, you should know your business well enough where you can speak conversationally to it. You don't need the slide deck. You know more about it than we do. Yeah. You should know more about it than we do. And one of the things that always turns me off is when someone needs to follow something very scripted in order to actually communicate about their business. Because what will happen to you is you'll mention something interesting on slide 4, and because I'm an investor, I'm impatient, I'll assume what's on slide 5, 6, and 7 and want to skip to what you actually have on number 8 and ask you a bunch of, you know, double, triple down questions on number 8. And then just people can get flustered, and that shouldn't be an issue. It should be something natural as breathing to the entrepreneur. Yeah. So that's the first one, which is just, you know, don't get thrown by that. And then the second one is, I don't ever want to have someone assume what I'm looking for or what I'm thinking about, because people often will look at our websites and assume that they need to use the words on our websites in their pitch somewhere, because then, oh, clearly I'm a great fit because I'm also in wearables. And they're like, no, actually, because your model is this, you know, and it's very frustrating. So we sometimes avoid telling people what we want, because then people just want to parrot it back. So don't try to tell us what, you know, you think we want to hear. Certainly don't talk about your exit strategy, because that's just going to piss us off that you're not building a company. And we will look for the things. And realistically, you don't want to waste your time with someone who's not a perfect or great fit for you. So you should be authentic to your business, and the right investors will match up, and you won't waste time with the ones that are not a good match for you. Again, it's dating. You know, don't say you want kids if you don't want kids. Yeah. Right? Don't waste time.
That's a good one. So when I'm meeting with companies, obviously we all ask a number of questions, but I have a favorite question, which sometimes throws people off. Again, I think a common theme, which is you're using your deck as something that's helpful, but not something that you're spending time expecting to go through page by page. I like to ask, you know, what is it about this particular problem that you're ready to dedicate the next 10 plus years of your life to? I want to know their why, right? I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I want to know your why. So that's like my one that I'm like, I'm really chomping at the bit to get to. Do each of you have sort of a question or a few questions that, you know, aren't your sort of typical questions that are going to come in the deck that you really like to get to the heart of?
So this is kind of typical. Some people leave out how they're going to get the first 100 customers, and then also how they're going to get the first 10,000, right? And those are two very different strategies typically. And I have been at First Round Capital. I still do interviews for the StartX Accelerator program at Stanford. So we care a lot about those first 100 customers. And it's shocking to me how little people think through that, right?
That's true.
Yeah. We sort of, I mean, we do have like a lot of the same questions. I always think, I have a tendency to ask this question, which is like, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
That's a good
instead?
one. I like that one.
Or if this fails, are you going to stay together? Like, what are you guys going to do?
And sometimes, like, there is just like a lot of people really just love what they're doing. They're like, this is all I want to do, and this is, sometimes it's, you know, they may be trying to sell it to you, but you get the sense whether they're genuine or not very quickly, and like, this is everything they wanted to do, and it's like, I don't have a backup plan because I put everything in this, and it's always interesting to hear people's answers.
Yeah, a couple of things that come to mind. I guess it depends on the stage of the company, but if it's super early, most financial projections get you to 50 million in revenue over 5 years. Sometimes 50 million in revenue over 4 years. But my big question is, how do you get to your first million? They're more convinced they'll get to 50 and have a better plan to get to 50 than the first million. So, for me, the most important thing is how you can get to product market fit, and then we can figure out how to scale it from there. The other is, how do you talk about your market size? A lot of times people will say,
50 billion market.
if we just get 1%
of that, we're great.
Yeah, 1% of every company on the planet to use this, or 1% of every consumer in the world to use this, we're going to be a massive company. But if they haven't thought about it in more depth than that, then I get pretty upset. I mean, I'm like, you really haven't. The most important thing is think about who is your addressable market, and why aren't certain people a fit for it now, and what could you sell your product at today versus down the road. I'm fine if the market size is small. Focus on a market that maybe a market is 200 million today, but over time you're going to build more products, be more relevant to more markets, and maybe over time it becomes $1 billion market. Like, that's the kind of story I'm looking for.